For 18 months, we have worked to expose corruption, inform Canadians, and search for the truth that we all deserve. And we have done this anonymously.
We promised to hide who we were for only as long as necessary. And now that time has come to an end. For over a year, you've known us as Cypher and Fox, the voices behind Northern Perspective. Our real names are Ryan and Tanya, and we're just a regular Canadian family living in the riding of Flamborough-Glanbrook.
Today, we stand before you not just as voices behind a screen, but as ordinary Canadians with a shared passion for truth and justice. Until recently, I worked as a public servant for the federal government. In March of 2024, the Treasury Board Secretariat issued a directive, and that directive was ordering all government employees to disclose any side income that they may have to their employer. We believe that our extensive work on the ArriveCan scandal was a direct consequence to this directive being issued. So, as a result of that, I disclosed Northern Perspective to my employer. Shortly after that, I was given a choice. Some would say an ultimatum. Cease all activity with Northern Perspective or exit the organization. Now, this was despite the fact that what we were doing was not illegal, and despite the fact that all activity related to Northern Perspective was on my private time, on my own equipment, and done anonymously. This was despite the fact that I had a distinguished performance record. This was an impossible choice for me and our family. As many of you know, I am the sole income earner in our household. We also have a young autistic son, whose therapies are expensive and were being funded by the additional income we earned through Northern Perspective. We have always stood for the right to speak freely, to criticize when necessary, and to hold our leaders accountable. We believe it is the right and the duty of every Canadian to speak out against corruption, and Fox and I believe that we fulfill this duty through our work with Northern Perspective. So on one hand, I have my job with the government that is paying for our bills, paying for our mortgage, paying for all of the other things that Canadians have to pay for, except twice as much under Trudeau. And then we have all of the expenses related to my son's therapy that Northern Perspective pays for. So really, what was the choice? It was cease Northern Perspective, which, yes, it helps contribute to the therapy funding for my son, but it also helps to expose the corruption of this Liberal NDP government. It serves to educate Canadians on Parliament. It serves to call out a multitude of scandals and ensure that our fellow Canadians get to understand how their government works. Because informed citizens is something that the government doesn't like too much, because informed citizens can hold their government to account. So that was the ultimatum before me. And we have a commitment to stand up for free speech, and we have a commitment to stand up for our principles. So what was it going to be? Well, needless to say, since I'm talking before you now, that Northern Perspective is still operating, and I am no longer an employee of the federal government.
Canadians should not be afraid of losing their jobs just for speaking out against our government. It is the right and it is the duty of every Canadian citizen to speak out against corruption wherever they see it, even in the most top levels of government.
You know, one thing that we've learned in our journey in Northern Perspective is that we never thought we would end up building a community ourselves. And it's a community of people who thought they were alone. They thought they were alone in, seeing what was going on with this country. And it's citizens, Canada's citizens, that is our biggest strength. Not the borders, not the land that we live on. It's the people. And there are millions of people across this country that believe in free speech, that believe in freedom from government.
And we couldn't sit idly by and worry about this happening to another Canadian family who has to choose between providing their son with therapy or the job that is providing for that family. That is not a fair choice.
And nobody should be forced to make that choice. Not in this country. Other countries, sure, you would expect that. Not Canada. That's not the Canada that we were born in. And that's not the Canada that I'm going to choose to live in, and I'm going to make that a better place.
And it's not the Canada we want to raise our son in.
Now, we don't believe in running away. We don't believe in being silenced, and we won't be. We won't be silenced. We won't be bought, because our free speech is not for sale. What we will do is take a stand, and we invite all of you to join us in taking that stand against this government, because enough is enough.
This government thinks it can act with impunity and do whatever it wants. It's going to be ordinary citizens like all of us who are going to stand up and say no more.
It's time for ordinary people to do extraordinary things. So the gloves are off, Canada, and it's time to get to work.